Alright guys, in our last video we discussed how to write the chemical formulae. There is another type of compound called covalent compound. And you know, there are two types of formulae for covalent compounds. The first type is empirical formula and the second is molecular formula. Now let's discuss empirical formula first. You can say that the simplest whole number ratio of the atoms present in a compound is known as empirical formula. If you know the percentage composition of each element of a compound, then you can easily calculate the empirical formula of that compound. Okay, let's have a look at some examples. There is a covalent compound called silica. It's present in sand and it contains silicon and oxygen. If you observe, the simplest ratio of the number of atoms of silicon and oxygen is 1:2. Therefore, we can say that its empirical formula is SiO2. And remember, we always write the number of atoms in the subscript in the formula. Now let's take a look at the molecular formula of glucose. There are three elements in glucose: carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. If we look at the simplest ratio of each element in a molecule of glucose, we will find that it is 1:2:1 for carbon, hydrogen and oxygen respectively. This ratio can be found by dividing each number by the smallest number, which is 6. In the end, the empirical formula of glucose is CH2O. Let's now talk about the ionic compounds. Since you are already familiar with formula writing, did you also know that these ionic compounds occur in three-dimensional network of ions? In that network, each ion is surrounded by the oppositely charged ion in a way that it forms a compound that electrically has no charge or remains neutral. Essentially, the whole compound has no charge. For ionic compounds, we always use their simplest ratio of the number of ions present in the formula unit. So, if you look at the lattice of sodium chloride, you will find there are several sodium ions along with several chloride ions. But the simplest ratio of sodium and chloride ions will be 1:1. Hence, the empirical formula will be NaCl. The formula unit of potassium bromide is Kbr. It means that the ratio of potassium and bromide ions in its ionic lattice is 1:1 only. Therefore, the empirical formula is Kbr. That's all for empirical formula, guys. And in the next video, I am going to tell you about molecular formula.